Now, before you get too excited, neuroscience, in essence, is teaching us that leadership actually relates to how the brain works. And many of the old theories we had are not working. And they've given us new ideas. So, first couple of things I want to share with you. I'm not very good at drawing, but have a look. This is your brain. And in here is the prefrontal cortex. This is a little dot called the amygdala. And back here is the basal ganglia. Now, I know you're watching this and you don't have to do anything, but just try this, all right? I want you to cross your arms and look at which hand or arm is on top, okay? And I know if both of them aren't there, look which arm is on top. Now, exactly reverse them. And I bet some of you are sitting there and you could just do it. And others are sitting there going, oh, I thought this was going to be easy. And then you end up doing this. Well, it's extraordinary when you watch 7,000 people doing this, because people get so, I don't know what to do, because you're doing something completely different. And the trouble is, change, it feels really hard. One, because the prefrontal cortex, which is where all the new behaviours go on, sucks up oxygen. It eats more oxygen than anything else in the body. So you do something new and your brain's going, whoa, this is really hard work, but it loves it. Now, the reason a lot of change is fearful to people is because the amygdala, this little dot here, is very close to the prefrontal cortex. And so it doesn't take much for the activity here to trigger this activity. And so understanding that, you can be prepared for people who are going to be frightened about change. Now, the other thing that happens, if you actually want people to change, there is a recipe for this. And that recipe is to FARC. Now, wait, because I'm going to spell it. F-A-R-C. So if you want people to change, the first thing they have to do, and you have to get them to do, is to focus on what it is you want them to change and where they're going. You've got to get them focusing, like Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind. Get them to focus on where it is they want to be. Then the second, the actual research says attention. But I like to say awareness. Because if we don't have awareness of where we are and where we want to go and how we're actually behaving, then we're not going to be able to change anything. The third thing, and this is critical, is repetition. You see, what happens, if we go back here, the more you do a behaviour, and the more we repeat it, it becomes positioned back here into the basal ganglia as an automatic reaction. See, think about when you learn to drive a car. The first time you started to drive a car, remember how white your parents were? And you're like, whoa, whoa, and you've got to remember the steering wheel and cars and feet and gear stick, and there's just so much happening. Your frontal cortex to go, whoa, and you'd be exhausted at the end of it. Well, now, haven't you driven home in the last 3, 4, 5 months? And you don't actually remember getting there? That's because all the new stuff has become automated and it's stored in the basal ganglia. So the more you repeat things, the more the basal ganglia take over that function, freeing up the prefrontal cortex for more learning. And that's the other key. If you want to stay young and healthy for your entire life and full of vitality and energy, you have got to keep learning. And you want to embed that into the people in your organisation, because if they don't learn, their brain's going to shrivel up. It's like use it or lose it, you know? And so what happens is the more the very first time you do something, it's like two neurons come together and they go, oh, look, a connection. And each time you do it, those neurons reconnect, and gradually this little fine string that connects them becomes a tree trunk. The more you do it, it becomes a tree trunk. Now that's great when you're learning. How about unlearning? Because the brain constantly prunes the connections based on use it or lose it. The more we do it, the more brain prunes or connects. And then the less we do it, the brain prunes off the things we're not using. So the trick is, when you've got a behaviour that's a habit, it's a big, thick tree trunk, you've got to start to focus on changing it, become aware the second you start going down this big tree trunk, and stop. And then you break that neuronal connection. Now this last one is a critical key for learning. Celebration. The human brain works through celebration, funnily enough. If we don't celebrate the small changes, as soon as we've made the changes, people lose heart. So remember, you've got to FARC. You've got to FARC if you want to change. Become a FARCer and teach everybody else in your organisation to be a FARCer as well. So, happy FARCing.